Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, esteemed guests, as well as all of our attendees from schools near and far. Today we have represented at our Judicial Clerkship panel, we have Brooklyn Law School, Fordham University School of Law, New York Law School, Pace University, Quinnipiac School of Law, Roger Williams University School of Law, Seton Hall, Syracuse University College of Law, and Yeshiva University, the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law. Thank you all for being here and for your interest in the New Jersey Judicial Clerkship program. Today we have a variety of guests for you, but let me introduce myself first. My name is Ryan Vicinage. I am the Chief of Organizational Development and Training here at the New Jersey Judiciary, and I am proud to present to you our esteemed panelists. We have a panel of 3 judges from a variety of backgrounds who are coming in from a variety of different trial areas, and they are going to give you a perspective on their side of what the law clerkship looks like for the New Jersey court system. We also have one of our current law clerks who is here to help us out and give you a perspective on what that experience might look like from your perspective. So we ask that you join the discussion, as the audience questions are going to be popped in throughout our process here today. So please make sure you put your questions in the Q&A function, so that way we get an idea as to what you're thinking and how we can address some of the concerns that you might have. So just a little bit about us. Oh, and one more thing. We're only going to go for an hour today, and I'm going to do my best to honor that time frame, because everybody's time here is valuable, and we want to make sure that everybody gets back to doing the good work that they are here to do. So let me just give you a quick rundown of the New Jersey court system and the Judicial Law Clerk program. The New Jersey courts are recognized and respected nationally for our progressive and innovative work. And additionally, we have an advanced information technology infrastructure that has enabled the critical work of the courts to continue even during the COVID-19 pandemic. We did the phenomenal job of moving all of our live court systems into a virtual court system in the matter of 3 days. Also, did you know that we have the largest statewide clerkship program in the nation? Each year, our judges hire approximately 480 law clerks statewide. And our panelists are here today to describe the critical work of our judicial law clerks and to give you information on the hiring process. So I'm honored today to introduce our panel. We have a panel of 4 folks who are esteemed judges and a law clerk from around the state. I'm going to take an opportunity to introduce all of them all at once, and then I'll have each of them introduce themselves and give you an understanding of what they do. So first, from the Hudson Vicinage, we have the Honorable Judge Jablonsky. Judge, would you mind saying hello?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Jablonsky. I am the presiding judge of the...
Hold on one second before you introduce yourself. I want to make sure I introduce everybody else. So just say hello, and then I will I'll come right back to you.
Hello.
Next, we have from the Union Vicinage, the Honorable Judge Lisa Walsh.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Excellent. From the Passaic Vicinage, we have the Honorable Judge Sohail Mohammad.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Excellent. And finally, our law clerk from the Hudson Vicinage, and she also represents Pace Law. We have Rachel Bauer.
Hi, everyone.
Excellent. So Judge Jablonsky, I very much apologize. I interrupted your introduction. I'd love for you to continue that introduction now. Can you let us know about yourself?
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Jeff Jablonsky. I am the presiding judge of the Chancery Division in Hudson County. The Chancery Division is a special division of the New Jersey Superior Court in which we deal with equitable issues. In the criminal division and in the civil division, there are a little bit more of a black and white determination as to whether there's liability or there's guilt, depending on the division in which they're in. We deal with ongoing relationships amongst parties and really focus on the fairness that we can try to craft in giving our litigants the satisfaction that they come before us to achieve. I most recently in the Chancery Division for the last 2 years, and before that I was assigned to the Civil Division when I came to the bench. But before that I was in private practice as a criminal defense attorney And then before that, I was a judicial law clerk here in Hudson County. And I can tell you folks without hesitation that it was without question the best year of my professional life. So I look forward to working with you, to speaking with you, and hopefully seeing some of your applications in the next couple of months. May I pass it over to Judge Walsh?
Sure. Thank you so much. So again, my name is Lisa Morales Walsh. I spoke with Ryan before. I said Judge Walsh is fine. I do generally go by Judge Walsh, but that's my full name. I am a graduate of Seton Hall Law School. I was a law clerk as well, which was a experience that we're going to talk about the whole time here. And I think it's great that you have individuals here who are actually law clerks. It's a really interesting experience to go from where you clerked to become a judge, where you clerked. I also clerked in Union County. I then became a Middlesex County assistant prosecutor. I did that for the bulk of my career. I did take a bit of a hiatus from that for several years. I did spend some more time with my 3 children. And I also was doing something really different. I did tax appeals, I did municipal court work. I did a special civil part trial about kitchen countertops. So I kind of varied my interests a little bit. Then I went back to becoming an assistant prosecutor again. And I've been a judge in the criminal division in Union County for 3 years now. And I'm excited to talk to you about clerkships and why they are really important to your career and your future. Judge Mohammad?
Thank you, Judge Walsh. Thank you, Judge Jablonsky and Ryan, and to all of you who are joining in this afternoon. Rachel, as well from Hudson. I elevated to the bench in 2011. I was first assigned to the Family Division. I enjoyed it tremendously. 4 years I spent in Family Division, did all types of cases in Family Division, starting with TROs, with domestic violence cases, juvenile and uncontested and matrimonial cases, and the cases were called under the FD docket, non-matrimonial adjudication. In 2015, I transferred to division. I love criminal division as well. And this is my 5th year sitting in the criminal part, where I sit in as a trial judge. Prior to becoming a judge, I was in private practice. From day one, I started my practice. I used to be a general practitioner focused on immigration law, and I was also a public defender in the city of Clifton. Prior to going to law school, what inspired me to go to law school is I was an engineering student, electrical engineering at NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. That's my 3rd year. Going into 4th, I was called in to serve as a juror. After I served in the jury trial in a criminal case, I was so impressed with our legal system, I decided to go to law school after engineering. I worked as an engineer during the day, and I went to Seton Hall Law School at night. And that's basically it. Come back to Ryan.
Thank you very much, Judge. And finally, Rachel, would you mind introducing yourself?
Everyone, I'm Rachel Bauer. I am currently Judge Jablonsky's law clerk here in Hudson County, doing general equity and probate. I'm originally from Nebraska. I was born and raised there. I moved to New York to go to Pace Law School. I did the environmental program, and so I graduated with an advanced environmental certificate, and then I applied to be a law clerk, and here I am.
All right, very well. Thank you very, very much, everybody. And let's get started with our first question. And Judge Jablonsky, I'm going to send this over to you. And Rachel, I'm going to ask you to inform us on this a little bit as well. But Judge, what was it like to work as a what is it like to work as a judicial clerk in the New Jersey courts?
That's a question for Rachel, right?
Well, what is it like to have clerks? What are clerks doing in our New Jersey court system? What does your clerk do, or your clerks do for you?
Well, I can tell you this, just in general. Our clerks, our law clerks, regardless of division, are an indispensable part of our chambers. Quite simply, we could not, under any circumstances, operate with the efficiency that all of our divisions do and all of our trial judges do without the assistance of our law clerks. I know that Rachel is on the line, and I'm looking at her right here, and I can tell her, I'm probably going to embarrass her and make her face all red, that if you want the archetype of what a judicial law clerk is, it is Rachel Bauer. There is, without question, so no doubt, a little bit of bias with regard to that. I'm sure Judge Walsh and Judge Mohammad feel the same way about their clerks. But our chambers couldn't work without the assistance of Rachel and my clerks before her. There are administrative responsibilities, but that's not the majority of their job title, what their jobs entail. Within the general equity part and the cases with which we hear, it takes a very special touch. It takes an understanding of the law. It takes an ability to write well and also to move the docket forward. So there's a fusion of the administrative plus the more substantive. What often happens is during a trial, if there's a question of law that comes up that I don't have an opportunity to research or I don't know the answer to, I will ask Rachel to take a look and give me a response both from the factual scenario that has been presented to us as well as the law that would guide the decision. And then we have obviously motions that we do every other week for general equity, and then the intervening dimes for the probate matters. And the law clerks are very, very necessary in order to summarize what the issues are and also then provide recommendations as to what the outcome should be based on his or her determination and understanding of what the law is. But all that aside, I think that if you had to address the appropriateness of law clerk and how that person fits within the grand scheme, we're looking for individuals who typify the mission of our chambers, both as members of the larger judiciary and also specifically as to what our personal philosophies are. And our law clerks are the ambassadors, if you will, of our chambers, and are on the front lines with what we need to do as judges and serving the public. So I think in a nutshell, that's what it would be.
For certain. And Rachel, can you give us a little perspective on what your experience has been?
Yeah, so I mean, also not to sound biased, I think I am very fortunate to be placed in the clerkship that I have. I think it even specifically fits the skill set that I wanted to obtain. And it has given me the ability to really enhance my legal research and writing. It enhanced time management because I think in law school, it's time management in the sense of like, you know, you need to study for finals and all this kind of stuff. But now it's like everything is on a 2-week cycle, and you take the time to also problem solve and be like, okay, this is what I need to do first. This is what I need to do second to make it easier on myself, but also my judge. And so I really enjoy it here. I think everyone should attempt to be a law clerk. It's mostly legal research and writing, kind of like my judge said, it's administrative sometimes. And whether we want to get into this now, especially during COVID, it has definitely changed. But you know, just kind of helping out to make sure that all of chambers is moving swiftly. And it's a lot of interaction with your judge and with other law clerks and even other judges as well.
Fantastic. Judge Walsh, can you tell us a little bit about how you interact with your law clerks and what are some of your expectations for your law clerks while they're on the job?
Well, I think my expectations for my law clerks, so as I said before, this is my 3rd year as a judge, so I'm relatively new to the scene. And I think that having been a law clerk and now having law clerks, the job has changed so much. Law clerks now are responsible. I remember when I was a law clerk, you're basically responsible only for producing memorandum to the judge. And now I think law clerks are required to really do a lot more, which is a good thing because they learn a lot more. As far as what I expect from my law clerks, I think, and we'll get into this a little bit later, I don't want to cross topics. I think you have to know a little bit about the judge that you want to work for, and you have to know how they like to operate, whether they like to issue a lot of written decisions, whether they like to do a lot of oral decisions from the bench, how much interaction they have with their law clerks, whether they give a lot of feedback or not, which I think is really important to do. And I think during COVID, it's become a little bit more difficult because there is something just really nice about being in chambers and your law clerk coming in and kind of discussing things and having a back and forth regarding legal issues. And it's, so I think that those are some of the things that I always expect the law clerk to be professional, to, you know, to be timely, to be professional, and to really get a sense of what it's like to be a good member of the bar, to be respectful of people, to treat people with respect, and to, you have to hold people accountable for things as a law clerk. I think it's one of the hardest things for law clerks to get used to, which is do a lot of chasing people down for late briefs, and you just came out of law school and you're calling these attorneys, and sometimes that can get a little bit overwhelming. But I think that you really just learn so many things that we're going to get into later that you just can't put a price tag on. And if you don't have a clerkship, you're missing those things.
For sure, for sure. Judge Mohammad, can you touch a little bit about how the duties may differ in the different trial courts?
Absolutely. Just my experience being in the family court versus the criminal division, two distinct divisions. You're still being a clerk, but depending on your interest, for instance, in the family court, it was my standard practice, and a lot of judges do this, and that is on the first listing date that we have, I would usually assign 5 to 9 cases to my law clerk for the purposes of what we call consent conference or mediation. And the goal was, number one, to have these issues that can be resolved prior to the litigants coming in. Most of these litigants were self-represented litigants, and they have issues such as child custody support and visitation issues. And those are the issues are very sensitive to mom and dad. And if they can resolve them sitting in a conference room with the law clerk, and I used to impress upon the litigants when I used to address them at the beginning, I would say to them, my law clerk is, either he has passed the bar, he's an attorney, or he has the background in the cases that we handle, and I encourage them to resolve them. And that was one aspect of the clerkship in the family court, which you don't find, because plea negotiations in criminal part, judges don't play any part, so do court staff, they don't play any part. But in the family part, there was a mediation, and there's also a component of what we call where the law clerks would participate in other adoption cases that we have. Within the family division, there will be other cases there will be permitted to. So the duties are very distinct, and just as Judge Jablonsky said, in the Chancery, you will have a different scenario. If you are assigned to a landlord-tenant judge, you may have very different duties. So be very specific in terms of if you have a special interest in a certain area. And by the way, I always tell my law clerks when I interview them, I can tell them, today when you're being interviewed, when you accept the job, I may be in the criminal division. By the time you come back, I may be sitting in the family, I may be sitting in the civil, because as judges, those assignments can change over a period of time. So it varies, and it's important to know you're not only your judge, but also the duties. The best resource is, I usually provide at the interview the number, contact information from my former law clerk, just to find out, how is it like to work with Judge Mohammad? All right, back to you, Ryan.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Judge Mohammad. I'm not sure who to direct this question to, so maybe somebody can jump in and let me know, but we don't have anybody who represents the Appellate Division or the Supreme Court Division, but how would those type of clerkships differ from a standard trial clerkship?
I could take that if you want.
Thank you, Judge.
The Appellate Division, our colleagues, Judge Mohammad and Judge Walsh, will probably agree with me when I say that the Appellate Division judges, as well as the Supreme Court justices, sit in a bit of a spectator's role to what we do as trial court judges. We're on the front lines, as my mentor, Judge Oliveri, would say, and everything that comes to us has to be resolved. So the clerks who sit and assist their judges in the Appellate Division and in the Supreme Court already have the benefit of what we have already created as part of the record in the trial court. And so they are more reactionary to those clerks who are in the trial division, who have to be a little bit more proactive. As Judge Walsh was saying, there has to be a bit of an outreach, as Rachel was saying, from the procedural and the administrative duties that clerks have. They are actually engaging with the attorneys at the very basic levels, even before the issues of law and are scrutinized as they pass through the trial court. So as a result, the Supreme Court clerks, as well as the Appellate Division clerks, are more focused on research and writing of questions of law, the consideration of whether there's an abuse of discretion, and really reviewing what has happened in the trial court at the trial court level.
Excellent.
If I could just simply comment real quickly, what the justices have said at seminars such as this one and the Appellate Division judges, the law clerks who are assigned to the to the appellate or the Supreme Court, just like Judge Jablonsky said, because they're not the trial court, which is the front line, they don't have that much interaction with the public or with attorneys face to face. Now we're virtual, but in that sense, they don't have that full interaction that you have in a trial court setting. They're mostly behind the scenes and doing all of the research. For instance, in the Supreme Court, all of the law clerks, for all of the justices, they are in a room together. They discuss issues as they come up, and they frame the responses that they have. They share the resources that they have. So it's a little bit different than a trial court setting where you are assigned to a judge. In some vicinages, each judge has their own chambers. Each judge has their own courtroom. Some vicinages have a shared location where law clerks sit together.
The only thing I would add to that is, by way of disclosure, so my husband did clerk for the Supreme Court while I was clerking, or maybe the following year. And my roommate, when I was a law clerk, was a law clerk in the Appellate Division. So this was years ago, so I kind of saw a bit of what they did. What I will say is that certainly those clerkships are extremely important, extremely coveted. And I feel that I've gone to a number of law school events at different law schools as of late, and I know that there seems to be a lot of focus on those clerkships. And if that's what you want to do and you're able to attain them, you should be extremely proud of your achievements. But I will tell you, if you want to be a litigator, if you want to be in the courtroom, you should do a trial court clerkship, because you cannot set aside the fact that a law clerk can make the time to come into the courtroom and observe. And there's nothing like that. There's nothing like having that opportunity when you're not a party to the proceedings and you don't have that pressure on you to sit there and watch what other people do, and to sit there and have them, have a trial in court, and then have the benefit of going in the back as part of the judge's staff and discuss what were the good things the attorneys did, what were the bad things the attorneys did. And so while I absolutely think that those clerkships are phenomenal, I think that if you want to be in litigation, you should seriously consider a trial court clerkship. I think it's a very important thing to think about, and where you see yourself in the future. And I am very happy to be here with such well-respected judges. I've been doing a bunch of seminars, and I've seen Judge Mohammad and Judge Jablonsky teaching other judges how to do things and teaching me how to do things, which is great. And I think I'm very happy that the trial court judges are so well represented today. So thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely, absolutely. To touch a little bit on the appellate position as well, we had Judge Maven on yesterday, and she represented the appellate division. And the thing that she said very directly is that if you are very into research, then the appellate division and the Supreme Court division is where you might want to be doing your clerkship. It's a very research-oriented clerkship. Rachel, can you tell me a little bit about how the flexibility in the times of COVID has changed the expectations and the way that you're operating in your position?
Well, what's interesting, I think of what I've got, I can't say for sure if I'm the only law clerk coming to court, but there's a few of us, but I think what has actually helped me in the times of COVID, and not to go backwards, but a lot of what I do before COVID was a lot of research writing. You know, if the phone call rang, like maybe I'd answer it, or maybe our secretary would. And it's a lot of like, how do I file? Where do I file? What do I do? And those are things that I typically I don't want to say deal with, but I didn't have to do prior to COVID. But now that COVID has happened, no chancery clerk is in for filing, no civil clerk is in, our secretary's out. And so it has provided me with the opportunity to understand the court system even more, because I think prior, when I would get a phone call saying like, hey, how do I file something? I'd be like, good question. And I would transfer you to a chancery clerk, but to file. But now it's all like, I know exactly how to file. I know where to go. We've, problem solved on different ways to file, and just acted in different ways. But I think it's been a great experience, and I've been able to see trials virtually. We've done hearings virtually. So we haven't really slowed down.
For sure, for sure. If anything, a lot of what's happened in the New Jersey court system has sped up, if anything.
Yeah.
And that's partially due to our technological sophistication. We have a phenomenal technology infrastructure that allows us the access to be able to provide virtual court systems. Judge Mohammad, you've had a great deal of success in your virtual courts. Can you share a little bit about the challenges and opportunities that have come with the virtual court process?
Absolutely, Ryan. First of all, what the state of New Jersey under our Chief Justice's leadership, Judge Grant, and the ITO has done is a monumental task. Not only, as you mentioned, 3 days, within 3 days, we were full up and running. We have so far handled in excess of 200,000 participants have participated through the court proceedings. And with that came in the technology that we had in existence and how to go about. And our law clerks, all our judges will say, our law clerks have been the backbone of our infusion of new technology and then the transfusion into the virtual proceedings. And I say this because law clerks are the one who are behind the scenes, getting the attorneys ready, making sure that the connections, the court smart is on, making sure that we have the interpreters that we need virtually to be present. And then obviously judges as hosts, as moderators, are controlling the courtroom. And so far, the reaction from our judiciary staff and judges and law clerks has been tremendous. And we have close to 95% of our operations are being done virtually. And that is something that we can all take credit, because every single one of us has contributed to the success of the program that we have. And we are a role model throughout the United States, or maybe throughout the world, to be in a position. Recently, our chief made an announcement just 2 weeks ago. We are going ahead with the pilot program, having a jury selection and jury process, which is jury selection and grand jury virtual proceedings.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say one of the biggest pieces that has come into play here is that we have been prepared. We have been proactive in being able to make that transition, and we are still continuing to be proactive. And I think that a lot of our court, our judicial clerks are a part of that process at the very, very least, and at the most are, like Judge Mohammad said, the backbone of what we're doing here. So I'd like to move on to our next question. And Judge Walsh, this is going to be directed at you. As a former law clerk and as a current judge, why should a law student pursue a judicial clerkship?
Okay, so in response to the question that you had posed to me ahead of time, I thought about the fact that my initial comments would be somewhat self-serving because I obviously want people to understand that a judicial clerkship is important, and for people who might be interested in a clerkship to definitely make application to me, as I'm sure Judge Jablonsky and Judge Mohammad, would feel the same way, because we are always interested in having people from diverse backgrounds who come from different areas. Like Judge Mohammad said that he is, his his other degrees and that he was in engineering. Like there's so many things that you can bring to the table. And so we're interested in having a wide array of people apply to us as clerks, because it's really kind of like a match, right? You want to make sure, like I said, the expectations are there, but also you want to work with a law clerk, and a law clerk should want to work with a judge who they feel comfortable in approaching, who they have done some homework on and decided that that's the type of person that they feel would be a good role model for them. Because really, the most important thing that I think a judicial clerkship does for you, and I was lucky enough at the time to clerk for 2 judges, Judge Ali, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He was a criminal judge. He went to the Appellate Division way after me. But this was back when criminal judges had 2 judges had 1 law clerk. This was a while ago, right? And it probably was that same way for Judge Jablonsky as well. I don't know. And Judge Spann was my other judge, and I still keep in touch with her. And it's just, if individuals say to me, like, how did you come into this job and kind of know how to conduct yourself? And the thing I say is I had that role model. And that's the truth, whether you become a judge or whether you're a lawyer. You just have that relationship and someone that can help guide you along the path. And it's someone coming from a family where, my brother was the first one to go and finish college, and I'm the only lawyer in the family. It was great to have that kind of person to back you. But I also did reach out to my law clerk, one of my former law clerks, to ask, how would you answer this question? Like, why do you think someone should do it? And he told me some really interesting things, which I'll tell you briefly. He said that it's a crash course in the law, and it teaches you real life application on an extremely broad array of legal issues. He also talked about the ability to watch the courtroom proceedings. He also said that it was something that was intellectually challenging in a way that in practice now, maybe he's not feeling as intellectually challenged, frankly. And he also talks about the networking opportunities, which I think everyone will cover, which is that you have the ability, I think Rachel said before, you work with other judges, you work with the court staff, you work with other law clerks, and that's another thing. Those other law clerks that are in your county, people get to know each other. Now you all have text strings, which we didn't have back then, but you have brown bag lunches, you go to lunch, and you get to know people. And as you move on in your career, those people will be people who may send you work, people who may be there for you when you have questions, and that's really important. I also asked a judge that has been quite a bit of a mentor to me, who's now retired. We actually had the ability to share chambers for about 4 months, Judge Pime. I spoke with Judge Pime and I said, how would you answer that question? And he said that he thinks it makes lawyers comfortable in dealing with judges. So some lawyers get very nervous when they speak with a judge, and that shouldn't be. You just should, be yourself like you are with everyone else, and be comfortable giving your position on things, and of course backing it up with the things that you need to do that. But he said it also gives insight to what judges are interested in and concerned about, and that it helps in the transition from law school to practicing. You can kind of see what kind of area of law you're interested in. My former clerks, I have one former clerk who's an assistant prosecutor. I have one and the other judges have this too. They don't always do what they were a law clerk for. I have someone who does insurance defense, I think, and the other one does personal injury. So it's good for you no matter what, because as Judge Mohammad said, I could be in criminal today, I could be in family tomorrow. You don't know for sure. So I thought that those were really interesting things to kind of get from other people's perspective. But it just seems, I think, I'm sure all the judges and to Ms. Bauer also, when you hear that question, when you hear why should you pursue a clerkship, I think the real question is why shouldn't you pursue a clerkship? I think some people think maybe there's financial reasons that you may think it's not the best fit for you, but it is a sacrifice. I remember being in that position and, making whatever it was back then. I think it was like $30,000 back then. And I remember that, and it's a struggle, but it is something that I think is really priceless. And I think that it's something that I would never, I talk to attorneys who didn't do clerkships and they tell me they wish that they had. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else I may have left out before I turn it over to my colleagues here. Let's see. I think that's about it. And there seemed to be, I had court this morning, we're doing all virtual court, all of us, and I had a public defender and 2 assistant prosecutors on. And when we were off the record, I told them I was presenting today, and I asked them, they were all law clerks, and I asked them these same questions, and they basically covered everything that I talked about here. It just gives you just a real sense of the inner workings of the court system, and it's something that you can always use in the future. Because although we're different from county to county, I think having spent a good deal of time now in 2 separate counties, really things kind of work basically the same. So I don't know who I'm supposed to turn them into. Judge Mohammad. Right?
Let me ask Judge Mohammad a specific question.
Sure. I'm sorry, Ryan.
No, that's quite all right. I just want to get see if we can get a perspective on how this would enhance a lawyer's professional career. So how have you seen it enhance lawyers' professional careers? And what have you seen the type of jobs that past law clerks have secured in your career?
That's a great question, Ryan. And as my co-panelist judges will say to you, one question that I always ask when the law clerks leave, and one question when on their first day, I tell them this and I remind them, and when they're leaving, and that is the first question when they join in is just assess where you are today. You are in an ocean, because when the law clerk, the first day of the law clerk, it's scary. It's really scary. The reason I'm saying scary is there is no other law clerk that you can talk to with this experience that you're all starting on the same day. The outgoing law clerk has already left. You're given this password. You're given the key to the chambers. You're given everything. And on day one of my law clerks we had 2 trials going at the same time. We had jurors who were deliberating, and we were picking a jury. And we never anticipated this was going to happen. So this law clerk, he was thrown into an ocean. So I asked my law clerk when they leave, Anthony, Tony, what did you learn? What was it like? And they will say, Judge, the first month was simply a ride that we could never forget. They all say the same thing, the 1 month. But believe me, this is for the law clerks. You have the ability to adapt. You have the ability, you have been trained as lawyer, have been trained in the law school to take the pressure and to turn that in a positive way and to learn. And what happens is in 2 months, all of these law clerks will, by December, they're all up and running. And by the time January comes around, they're making applications, they're filling out applications for new jobs and all this stuff. So the time flies. But one thing that I would say is what law clerks would agree, they all agree, is the skill set that you come with, it's all enhanced by the time you leave. You learn to be patient. You learn to be hardworking. There is no such thing as 9 to 5 as a law clerk, because for a judge, there is no such thing as a 9 to 5. When issues come up, we address them, and we have to stay late, we stay late. So all of those issues, when you take into account, it's a really rewarding position to be in, to be a law clerk, because you are the closest one to a judge. After my children and my wife, I think our law clerks are the closest one to, there are things that judges share with law clerks they would not share with anyone, including the secretarial staff, because, this is a special relationship we have, right?
Thank you so much, Judge. I very much appreciate that. You started to talk a bit about the skills and some of the things that you pick up. A law clerkship is certainly, from everything that I'm gathering from Judge Walsh and Judge Mohammad, is a transformational experience. So Judge Jablonsky, can you tell us a little bit about some of the skills and characteristics that have developed and demonstrated to potential, that can be developed and demonstrated to potential employers as you progress through a law clerkship?
I think that there are 2 things that a clerkship can absolutely provide all clerks, regardless of division. And it was suggested by Judge Walsh and Judge Mohammad, and that being the institutional understanding of how the court system works. You can study it from a book as much as you can, but until you get into the trenches and really see how things work on a vicinage level, on a county level, it is without question worth its weight in gold. Having the benefit of clerking here in Hudson and then working here as a judge in Hudson, I can tell you that the relationships that I formed 15 years ago when I was a clerk still exist now. I know how things are done, and I know what to say to individuals in order to make sure that things go forward. And these are things that you earn, and I didn't say learn, earn from working as a clerk. And because the rewards that you receive are absolutely invaluable, again, from an institution, particularly if you want to practice in the county in which you have clerked. It also, just from an overall professional perspective, this is the second point, is that it really refines your ability to practice well, because you can see and go through your professional responsibility classes and all that finishing stuff that you do as part of being a third-year law student. But until you get into the courtroom and see it from the judicial perspective, sometimes you see what is good, which is somewhat instructive, but more times you see what is bad, which is overwhelmingly instructive as to what not to do. And you don't get that sense inside either sitting in the gallery or being an advocate. You do from the bench side of it, see these things, and that without question allows you to develop your own personal style, your own personal temperament, your own level of preparedness, and certainly and absolutely defines your work ethic from the clerkship perspective. So I think those 2 points are what absolutely you can take away from a clerkship.
Fantastic. I see some questions that are rolling in. I'll encourage everybody who does have questions to continue to use the Q&A function. We'd love to hear from you, but I would love to send this over to Rachel and ask, how has your clerkship been a transformational experience for you? What have you truly gained from this experience that you're taking with you into your career?
Well, I know when I graduated law school, I think all law students and family members assume that you will go straight into the courtroom and be able to argue your case and win. And I just remember graduating and realizing that I don't know how to start a case. And I hadn't worked in a law firm. I worked at nonprofits and government agencies all throughout law school. And so that was the main purpose of me wanting to do a clerkship, and specifically in the trial court level, because as what has been said, it gives me a very in-depth learning experience as to, okay, like even if, someone calls and says, like, I want to start a case, what do I do? Well, step one, it's like, you need to serve, which the amount of times that I have to call attorneys who don't serve is astounding. And so it really provides a great explanation of how a case starts from start to finish. And I hadn't learned that in law school. And so I'm very glad that I did a clerkship, and it is something that I will think that I can bring to my next job. And, the mentorship is something that's invaluable, that I cherish every day, that I will continue to cherish. And it also, I think, even besides just procedural, I had mentioned that I have worked with other judges just kind of intermittently. And I think it also is a good thing to learn where, what works for your judge doesn't work for another judge for a variety of reasons. And so I think even as an attorney to know, that's good to know, because you prepare a case differently depending on who the judge is. And I think that helps my, to be a lawyer, and also just in my writing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for that perspective. So we'll move into our final question here, and maybe this is the question that a lot of people are showing up for, and it's how do we go through this process of application and interview and end up getting yourself a law clerkship or a judicial clerkship? So Judge Mohammad, let's start with you. What do you look for in a potential law clerk, and do you have any tips for the application and interview process?
Yes, what I look for, and it just varies from judge to judge, but there is a common threshold that we all look for. And certainly it would be very, very helpful for a trial court judge, whatever division that we sit in, to have a law clerk, prospective law clerk, skilled in both legal research and excellent writing skills, because that's what trial judges do. In the middle of a trial, on a homicide trial, I may have an issue that comes up that I need to have that issue researched. Sometimes in the middle of a trial, I am simply sending a message out to my law clerk saying that I'm going to be getting off the bench. I need to have this research. So the ability to have a research completed in, a thorough job, that's very important. Second thing is, and law clerks are our face, as Judge Jablonsky and Judge Walsh said. You are our face. You are our ambassadors. So I usually say that this is very important because I have a policy that I make it clear. When I first got on the bench, my chief of security asked, Judge, is there any specific quality that you're seeing in a sheriff officer? And I said, the only thing that I am seeking is zero attitude. I mean, that reflects on us, which means from the sheriff officer to the secretary to the law clerk, these are our ambassadors, and they need to work with them. They need to have a demeanor that they can work with others, and that would be reflective of the bench. Other things that we're looking for in the process is the type of courses that they have taken. For instance, if the issue is, I'm not so focused on the grades as much as the variety of courses that they have taken. And my interview process, unlike a lot of other judges, I don't interview for the upcoming year until May. So I will wait out for the 9 years. I've been the last judge in my vicinage, maybe in the state, until HR reminds me you have to. But my secretary throughout the year collects all of the resumes, and come April, I will get the full stack, and then I will start reviewing them one by one. And I usually put a yellow sticky on the name because I don't want to know the name. I don't want to know where they're from. I just simply want to read their paperwork. And I usually put down 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. No one has ever gotten 10. And usually if they make it for an interview, a 6 or a 7 would make it to the interview. If they have law review or other writing that they have done, that would be very helpful. But I weigh heavily on the personal interview that I have. That is something very critical for me when they come in, when I interview them.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the perspective on that. So Judge Jablonsky, let me pass this over to you for a second. So when you're selecting candidates for an interview, what makes a candidate stand out to you? What makes them stand out in a good way? And what's also making them stand out in a bad way?
I am looking for a law clerk that shares, as I had started in my introduction, a similar philosophy that I have. And then along with that is the work ethic that I like to perceive myself to have, and looking for someone who will be able to work with the chambers. And in my opinion, nobody ever works for anyone. We always work with each other because it is a team effort. And as much as the law clerks can rely on us, we rely on the law clerks. And we have to have a good trusting relationship, one in which the new attorney, the new law clerk will be able to exercise discretion when is necessary, and be able to, as Judge Mohammad said, be a good ambassador, and looking for those qualities that will come through. I'm looking for someone who has excellent academic credentials as well as writing experience. And what I look for in particular are extracurricular activities that focus on a person's intellectual advancement. So I'm looking for moot court, mock trial, law review, because those are discretionary activities. I know that there's a thought about that they're only resume builders. They're not. They show that there's a choice that was made early on in a person's legal career to engage and spend valuable time in advancing their own ability to think as a lawyer. We've all heard that cliche. But if there's a finite amount of time, and if that time is being used to advance one's own ability to think like a lawyer, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking for. I'm also looking for individuals who have the academic credentials that may be consistent with the division in which I may be sitting. And this kind of dovetails on what Judge Mohammad was saying with regard to certain coursework. In the civil division here in Hudson County in particular, and I suspect throughout the state and all of our vicinages, civil law clerks engage in mediation, and CDR, which is a complementary dispute resolution, is one of the component parts of our judiciary system. Our law clerks have the opportunity in the civil division and the special civil part in particular to engage in mediation and settlement and facilitative conferences to try to work out cases, and most importantly, in the Special Civil Small Claims Division. So if there is an opportunity to start with those very practical skills that fuse both procedure and substance in law school, like mediation, CDR, or however it's called in whatever your institution might be, I'm looking for that. Because again, that was a conscious choice that was made because it harkens to the ability to actually practice and have that practical experience that you'll be able to bring to the clerkship and make it better, not only for the judges' chambers, but also for yourself professionally.
Absolutely. And so just to bring this to the next step. So all of what Judge Mohammad and Judge Jablonsky are talking about here are the experiences and that you're bringing in, and how you've represented yourself through your schooling, and how you represented yourself extracurricularly. So now you've got to come in and you have to represent yourself. You have to go through the interview process. You have to be able to articulate how this has been important to you, and why these experiences have formulated your perspective on the law. So I have a question that's going to ask for two perspectives, one of the interviewer and one of the interviewee. So this is for Judge Walsh and then for Rachel. So Judge Walsh, when a candidate comes in, what can they expect in the interview process, and what is your perspective on that interview process?
Well, I think the interview process is, I think for all the judges, it's the most important part, because you've already screened a resume, you've already looked for all of the little things that are important, that's been outlined by Judge Mohammad and Judge Jablonsky. And I, of course, have my own list in that regard, but they pretty much covered everything. And so you have this individual coming in, and I think that I always try to remember what it's like to be in that person's position. I know they're nervous, so I usually tell them, take a deep breath. Like, if they appear nervous, I've, had people that are like profusely sweating. I've had people I've had to give water to. Like, people get a little bit worked up about it. I do it on a much earlier scale than Judge Mohammad. Everyone has their way. Some people wait and some people are early. I'm an early person. So as soon as it opens up, I think I don't know when it is now. It used to be in June, right, Ryan?
June 2020.
It is in June.
Yeah, it's still in June. Okay. So I check early and check often. I will even sometimes look at people who have applied to other judges and reach out to them if I think that they are interesting to me. And I know there was a question about that there. But from my perspective, I just want someone to come in and to basically ask good questions, such as, what do you expect from a law clerk? How involved am I going to be in the processes here? And I want to make sure, and I think this has been expressed before, that individuals understand that if you are becoming a lawyer, which you all are, and lawyers don't work 8:30 to 4:30. It's just, if that's what individuals think because it's a government job, that's what it's going to be, it's not. And I think both judges have expressed that to some extent as well. But I'm just looking for someone who really wants the experience, who's willing to put aside whatever other opportunities they may have ahead of them. And as I said, someone who really is interested in trial work. And sometimes you get individuals who have all the credentials to get an appellate division, federal clerkship, Supreme Court clerkship, but they come and they say, I want to do trial work. And sometimes you'll get individuals who maybe say, I had a rough first semester of law school, but I'll look and I'll see, hey, they were an English major, an undergraduate, they, graduated with a great GPA. So obviously that says to me they're a good writer. I think that that's important to all of the judges here. But I'm looking for someone that I can have a conversation with. I want to know, what your other interests are. I like when people put on a resume that they like, hiking, that they enjoy other kinds of activities. Sometimes I have to look things up. I had a law clerk who told me that he was interested in husbandry. I didn't know what that was. Apparently he used to have a fish tank company. So I just want to have a good conversation with someone and understand what they are looking for, what I'm looking for, and you just get a real sense, and you have to go with your gut as to whether or not this is a person you want to work with closely for an entire year.
Excellent. And Rachel, can you give us a brief understanding of what the clerkship interview is from your perspective?
Yeah. So I guess to kind of prequel to that, as soon as they opened, I had everything ready. I had my resume ready. I had my letters of rec ready. I had everything ready, and I just bombarded day one. And I think actually the latest one I applied to was Judge Jablonsky because I didn't have enough letters of rec, which saying that, look ahead of time, because some judges require none, some judges require one, some two, some three. And so look at that ahead of time. But in preparation for the interview, I guess just similar, I guess overall interview tips is just to know your resume front and back. If you have that you got a scholarship with someone's name on it, they may ask you what that scholarship was for and know what that is. And I think what helped me a lot for nerves is, you want to work for them because they are a judge that you chose, but similarly, they chose you. And you want to make this good pair. And so it's kind of not that you're interviewing each other, because that's not quite accurate, but, just be yourself, because if it's not a good pairing, then it won't be a good year. So just be who you are and express your interest, again, like in trial court. And honestly, I didn't even apply to family court clerkships because I didn't know what I would even say when they asked, why do you want to be in the family court? So I just didn't even go there. And so just kind of like look at the judges, look what they do, look what the court does, and be ready to answer, questions accordingly.
Excellent. Thank you. We have about 4 minutes left, and I want to give each of the judges an opportunity to voice anything that they haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. I've been driving some pretty specific questions at you, so this is the time. I'll give each of you about a minute if you choose to use it. What's any one last thing you want these potential court clerks to know about this position and how they can be a part of this process? So we'll start with you, Judge Walsh. Any thoughts from you that we haven't gone over yet?
I guess the only thing I will say is I do remember applying for clerkships and applying to, I knew that I wanted to do criminal when I applied to clerkship. So I think I applied to every criminal judge in the state of New Jersey. This is back when, you didn't have the online system. I think that there is something to be said for maybe taking the time ahead of time and deciding, obviously, a chancery clerkship is something that's, highly coveted, similar to like an appellate division clerkship. And Judge Jablonsky did not ask me to say that. Everyone just knows that it's true. That's a fantastic clerkship. It's a fantastic experience. It's something that a lot of law firms look for. And that's a fantastic experience for someone who's interested in that type of future. And there's no doubt about that. But I just think that it's important to, and it might be hard if you're from a different state or something like that. My law clerk from next year is from Virginia, from William and Mary. I don't think that's part of this, but I'm just saying that I think I had one from Pace 2 years ago. And I think it's important to maybe, with the power of Google, just take a look at things. Or if you know someone who works in the county, who appears in the county, to just get a sense of like, what is the judge's reputation? It may not always be accurate, to be honest with you, but you just want to get a sense of if you like to work in a certain way, if you're an early bird and you know that this judge gets in at 7 o'clock every morning, then maybe that's going to be a better fit. So there's something to be said of, I agree, and I appreciate Ms. Bauer saying that it's not like you're interviewing the judge, and I get you want to have that respect, and I appreciate that, but I think in some ways, in the small part, it is. And so you want to make sure that you're not kind of wasting anyone's time. And I know that there's a lot of protocols, like we're not going to ask you to accept on the spot and things like that, but you just want to make sure that you aren't wasting a judge's time and you're coming in for a position with someone that you're interested in working for and that you would seriously consider working for, and not just to get practice interviewing. That's the only thing I could think of that I haven't said already.
Thank you very much. Judge Mohammad, any wisdom from the Passaic County?
That's the wisdom I would say to Ryan is the clerkship is not for everyone. Early on in my law school, when I was working as a full-time engineer, going to school at night, and in my second and third year, everyone, just about everyone in the class either applied for clerkship or they were disappointed they didn't get an internship or clerkship. I happened to choose that. I early on decided that I will not be doing a clerkship because I wanted to make sure I had passed the bar. I wanted to make sure I had a job and I was going to get married soon. So there were things that I had. So if you apply for a clerkship and you don't get a clerkship, that's not the end of the world. You just continue on, you move on, and the life has tremendous possibilities. So clerkship is a great opportunity, but it should not be something that you should lose your hope and your faith in, because you have invested a lot going to law school and doing everything that you have done. So don't take this as something if you don't get a response, because 400 positions and each judge probably gets about 150 to 200 resumes. So we have to be selective. So it's not personally about you, it's simply the sheer volume that we have and the graduates that are applying.
Fantastic. And Judge Jablonsky, any final wisdom before I let these folks know how and when and where they should be applying?
I think the best thing that I can impart is that this clerking is a wonderful job. It's a wonderful opportunity and really gives the opportunity to young law students to be a part of something bigger. We talk about the system, capital S. You really have an opportunity from the ground up to see what is happening. And most importantly, and I say this without any exaggeration, you really, truly can make a difference. You make a difference with an individual who is a self-represented individual who comes to me, as Rachel has said, and says, how do I do this? And the ability to express on behalf of the judiciary, this is the way that you need to proceed in this fashion, without giving advice, of course, but just show the person who may be unaware, but this is the most important thing to them at this particular moment, to place them on the right track, I think has a great sense of satisfaction. This is a vocation for all of us, whether we wear the robe or whether we work with the person who wears the robe, and understanding that position institutionally, as well as have the ability to really facilitate that which we have decided to do, what we do, is a wonderful thing, and the clerkship is the first step toward that.
Thank you so much to all of my esteemed panelists here today. And very briefly, want to make sure that everybody is aware of how to apply for these clerkships. So in the 2021 court term law clerk vacancies, if you are interested, you can find those applications at njcourts.gov and go to the law clerk recruitment page, access the law clerk web-based portal. The law clerk notice of vacancy will be posted on that website, njcourts.gov, on June 1st. As of June 15th, applications for clerkships are accepted for the 2021-22 court term through the Judiciary Law Web Clerk-based portal. And on June 22nd, justices and judges will begin contacting candidates for interviews and job offers. One thing I've learned from both of these panels, both today and yesterday, is that these go very quickly because judges want to make sure that they get the right clerk in the right job as quickly as they possibly can. So if you're good, they're going to want to snap you up quick. Thank you very, very much for all of your time and for everything that you have participated in today. To Judge Walsh, Judge Jablonsky, and Judge Mohammad, thank you very much for spending some time with some potential law clerks today. To Ms. Bauer, thank you very much for sharing of your experience. If you have additional questions, please contact Human Resources at the lawclerkfac@njcourts.gov email address. And if you need more information, make sure to go to that njcourts.gov recruitment page for law clerks. It'll have all the information that you need. Once again, I've been Ryan Vicinage from the New Jersey Judiciary, and thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.